Coming to you live from planet Earth's real Gotham City. My name is Ra, and I'm here to awaken the dormant particles spiraling inside your DNA. So come with me as we go further down the mystical spiral of life. Spiral Radio, where each and every week we unveil the different shades of you and the different shades of me until we all vibrate the same frequency. Welcome, everybody. It's another action-packed week. We got a great guest lined up for you, and the moon is in Cancer, my emotional sign. My guest, since we only have an hour like always, we're just going to get right into it. My guest is Christopher Garetano, MontaukChronicles.com, everybody. He's a creator, a director. He's got a unique eye for the paranormal. He is an amazing man. He spends years dedicated to each project. I can't say anything better about him than I already have, actually. He's such a great creator. You know, he went to film school. He's none other than Christopher Garetano. Welcome, Christopher.
Oh, thank you for having me, brother. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Awesome intro to the show. Is that your music?
It's my friend Ricky created it as well. Yeah, nice. Ricky Rodriguez. Yeah, and he has some of our shows. On our break, he plays a lot of music on our shows, and you'll hear my music as well on the outro and during our breaks as well. It's like awesome. Between me and Ricky Rodriguez, yeah, we do all the music.
Yeah, well, maybe we could work together on something.
Definitely, man. I would really love that. I'm developing a comic book too that I've been working on for like 2 years. I just need someone to help me put it on paper, like ink it. I have all the scripts written and everything. Or I really think it should be an animation or something one day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are so many artists out there to collaborate with that it's just a matter of, like, we did a comic. It got published as a strip in Fangoria magazine, and I was looking for a distributor to put it out, but, I mean, there's so many resources for us right now that the world has changed, and it's no longer a taboo to self-distribute or promote even. So it's just, I think it's all in the presentation. If the presentation is good and your work is interesting, the sky is the limit, in my opinion. And, I definitely am doing my best to practice what I preach.
Yeah, man. I have watched the Montauk Chronicles. I got that film from yours maybe like a year ago now, and it's more like a docu-film. But it's you have such a unique way of tapping into the characters in the film's traumatic events and portraying that in such an artistic, unique way that it's like you were destined to create the paranormal in a way, And I think your childhood life, like the different stories that you've come up with, and I think you were kind of groomed for this your whole life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking back in hindsight, I mean, I'm sitting in my little home office right now, and I have a bookshelf that has books that date back to when I was 5. I've been collecting books on the occult and the paranormal since I was that young. So, you look back in hindsight, or you look back at your experiences. I've had some really odd experiences, to say the least, in regard to the unexplained, and my interests have always been there, never changed. So yeah, I agree. It's feels like it's part of my destiny, especially how much time and how much of my life I've spent in the last 10 years on this, just making it my life. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're around the same age. I think you're like a year older than me, and we had, probably had similar childhoods and similar tastes. And I definitely resonate with everything that you have in your films and what you say in your interviews. I've heard a few of your interviews. It definitely resonates with me strong, and that's why I wanted to have you on Spiral Radio, because Spiral Radio is it's not just about most shows in the paranormal. It's a little bit different. I think we're a little unique because it's about also musical healing. I felt through my life, music has healed me, and I incorporate that in the song to kind of go with the topics, and also like I try to find certain guests that most people might not have heard of, but they're still really popular in a certain cult, not cult way, but like a cult following in the paranormal field. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Guests,
Yeah, that's where at currently that's where I am, and I've been for a while. I've had little pockets of people that have been interested in my work. It's made me very happy that anybody gave a damn. And no, I mean, I get a great vibe from you and your show, and much appreciated, to have me on here and talk about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think you're about to blow up though, and you've won several awards on the Montauk Chronicles, right? Before I get into, because we're trying to give you a little intro first because it goes by quick, but so I have a lot of questions and things I want to get you. But you've won several awards on the Montauk Chronicles. It's not just that you have a few followers. You're starting to make it now, starting to get noticed.
Yeah, the awards were great because they came from sincere people, and I appreciate that. And so usually I don't really care about that stuff, and sometimes it's very political inside the film festival circuit. But it was given to me by people who appreciate the subject matter and who are good people. So I like that, and I appreciate the gesture. Outside of becoming further recognized, somehow Montauk Chronicles did get around. It got to some huge. Got the attention of some much larger companies, and I can't say the network right now only because they requested me not to until they start promoting it. But we've been developing a show for a network now for a year, and we're in heavy pre-production. We're shooting in 2 weeks, and it'll air in April for this major network, and it's based off of my work and my investigations into conspiracies like the Montauk Project.
Wow, yeah, yeah, we should talk off air definitely because I create like soundtrack stuff too as well, music and stuff. Definitely, I would definitely.
Yeah, I was thinking.
I would do that for free, man. I would I would do it for you for free,
I'm working on a smaller movie. I'm working on a much larger movie called Bigfoot, but there's a smaller project I'm working on, and it surrounds the idea of misuses of black magic and the black arts. And
Wow.
your music would fit really well on that. Just listening a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, do you think these stories, before we get into, because I'm not sure how much our listeners know of the Montauk Project and of your film, your docu-film, but do you think maybe these, because from your film, I listened to it and watched it and like really listened to what you were saying in it, and you're talking about, there's a few minutes before you get deep into the film where you talk about your childhood a little bit, and you're talking how you would come up with these stories as a kid of and you were known for telling these stories in your neighborhood, and you would come up with stories about like a voluptuous alien woman who showed up in your backyard, or these wild science fiction tales. I mean, do you think that, because that's pretty off the charts, for a kid to just come up with? Do you think that somehow these are like past life recall events, or some kind of, it's hidden in your subconscious, kind of awakening in your DNA somewhere, or
it's very possible. I obviously I'm open to these things now. Back then I didn't understand, and I have a pretty sharp memory, and I remember that time. That was a long time ago, and I did tell everybody in the neighborhood that this woman, very tall, beautiful woman, came out of a ship that landed in my backyard, and I was compelled to tell everybody in the neighborhood, and I still get teased for it to this day by some of the people who remember. But I kind of remember it. I mean, thinking back in my memory, I mean, the story's been told so many times, but I remember this woman, and it could have been a woman in a costume. I don't remember what time of the year it was, but I also remember the ship. But at that age, I was also exposed to a ton of movies because my parents owned one of the early mom and pop video stores. So I was in and out of that place, and I was exposed to so much material. But I don't remember seeing it in a movie. I remember seeing it outside, and I was just charged to go and tell people. But I can't remember if it was real or not.
So now that explains too where the seed was planted for you to be a movie director and creator from your parents, from having that store.
Oh, I've never wanted to do anything else, and I don't believe I've ever done anything else. I was really into special effects makeup by the time I was 6 years old, and I had a makeup kit. Yeah, and there was a guy named... Oh, I mean, I still am. It's one of my... I would say that went from like my career aspiration to becoming a real serious hobby. And obviously making movies, all of the above is available to you. Everything's available as a director and a filmmaker. So I still did some of the special effects makeup, some of it in Montauk Chronicles. And I'm interested in even sharpening those skills up, but never being the main guy. It's just something I really loved doing as a kid.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. I could picture it. You know, I don't know when people use the word psychic, it's kind of a broad term. I'm very intuitive with certain things, and I had a big image of you creating stuff when you were younger, like putting horror outfits and masks together and stuff like that, and arms and bloody arms and
Yeah, that
stuff.
was
Yeah, yeah,
it was every day for me as a kid. It's exactly what I did. I used to. I mean, I would do silly things like like severed fingers and severed hands,
yeah,
and sometimes
yeah.
I.
I was picturing bloody arms. Yeah,
Oh yeah, all the time, and I had a huge collection of masks, and horror movies were my thing, and it was like these, and the kids I made friends with. I was like, there weren't many kids like me. Now it seems like there's so many of them, but I was the only kid in my neighborhood, and as far as I knew, even in my school system, that was like this. So the guys I ended up befriending at the time, who some of were all different things, they were in the military, cops, some of them are not, they became criminals, whatever. But the point now is these guys wanted to hang out with me because I did this thing, I did this special effects thing. So I ended up making friends with these guys because I was unique. So they would come over to make a movie with me when I was a kid and hang out with me because it was more fun than moseying around in the woods for 6 hours doing nothing.
yeah, and that's all there is to do, kind of in New York. And if you're in the suburbs of the city, that's all there is to be in the woods or get high or get drunk or whatever. That's what it is. That's what people do, and it's great that you had that hobby from a young age and a crutch to keep you away from all that. To lean on that. Put you out in your own world.
Sure, well, it's the desire to create. I mean, I've had a very loud and insane imagination since I was a little kid, and it was just an outlet for it. Yeah, and now I have this wonderful way to put it into motion pictures, and luckily, technology's changed, and it's allowed us to have the tools at our disposal that were monopolized by these big industries for so long. Now we can do anything with them. We really can. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the goals here on Spiral Radio is to help awaken everybody. I feel there's been a veil put over our consciousness, and it's time to awaken what our true, capabilities are that's lying dormant in our DNA. Basically, it's our true abilities is to explore our soul and our spirit, and not to chase this material world trap that we're in. And if everybody, if you're just joining us, because it's already 15 minutes fly by, we're with Christopher Garetano, and he's at MontaukChronicles.com, and you can also he's created White Phosphorus Pictures. That's his picture company, and you could buy his movies at WhitePhosphorusPictures.com, I think, as well. Now, Christopher, for you to get involved in Montauk, now this is a really strange tale to just want to dive into. Did you feel drawn to this, like you being from Long Island and hearing probably the campfire tales about Montauk Project? Did you feel like this weird lore to it that made you go that direction? Like, what made you choose that?
Well, I just have to say there was a while back that when I was a kid I had this typewriter and I would write stories. I wrote this one story of this guy locked up who was absorbed into a secret program who was supposed to decode things, and I remember I wrote about a creature that was unleashed from this large computer, and this was way before this was probably in junior high. This before
like Duncan Cameron. Oh my God!
Right, and I have that somewhere. I have it somewhere in my boxes in storage. But I look back and I wrote stuff like that, and there were things in science fiction and in different things that were similar to that. So maybe I was inspired by that, but I was certainly interested in that type of subject matter for sure. And so when that book was out, I spent my summers as a kid in Montauk never knowing there was a legend. In the early 80s, sometimes those summers got pretty boring. They were fun for the most part, but if I knew there was a secret experiment legend that surrounded this, I didn't even know the base was there, because in the summertime, the foliage is so thick that you really have to look at right in the proper direction from Montauk Point. Otherwise, you're not going to see that tower. Now, when you're close to the tower, it's enormous. It's very ominous and it's huge. But when you're further away at the landmarks, the tourist landmarks, you don't really see it unless you know what to look for. And so there was this one thing that happened when I was a very little kid in the early 80s. I was walking down the beach with my father and my uncle, and it was near Montauk Point, near Camp Hero, and this military guy comes out of nowhere and stops us and says you can't go any further. So it was a protected area.
Now
You
this was
can't
supposed to
walk
be
any.
abandoned by then too, right? At this time.
Yeah, I mean there was some activity there. I guess maybe they were supposed to be tidying things up, but this is right around the time, 83-ish, that
Yeah.
nothing was supposed to be happening, or the
Yeah.
project was ending.
It just ended. Yeah, like a
So
year or two it had ended, right? By then.
right, and my buddy
Yeah.
Eric Swanson told me about the book for the first time, I think, and I said, "Wow, Montauk. I didn't know there was anything happening in Montauk," and so I kind of read the book, and I felt the way it was presented at the time was kind of funny, only because it had this heroic ending, and
Yeah. Yeah.
there wasn't much about the Montauk boys either. There wasn't really anything about the boys being kidnapped and murdered, and I felt later on that's what really rang true for me, and that was very believable. But by the time I got to an opportunity to make it, and I was ready to make Bigfoot at that time in '06. I wanted to start something on the Sasquatch legends, but my friend at the time, John David Brody, he suggested, because he was really obsessed with the whole Montauk Project situation, and he suggested, well, you're from Long Island, you don't have to travel to too many places, the base is accessible to you. You don't have a lot of money to make this movie, so why don't you you want to make something on the paranormal, this is the thing. And I said, well, I read the book, and I don't know, because I just feel like the way it was presented, it wasn't very believable, in my opinion. But the idea of going to Alfred Bielek's house and Preston Nichols' house and seeing Stuart Swerdlow was a much better idea, so I wanted to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where it all started. I said, okay, let's see what these guys have to say. I'm gonna make a character study, and that's really what my movie is. It's less of an investigation and more of a character study. But I started fresh. I put the book away, and I put all the other books away, and I wanted to make my own book. So I started from scratch, as if I didn't know much about the situation except the general idea, and went out there and started letting these guys talk to me and listened. And I explored the base, and I did everything I was supposed to do, went to the archives and started collecting that stuff for the motion picture. And that's where it all began.
Yeah, you did it the right way. I mean, nobody can say anything now. I mean, you heard of an event, a mysterious, dark event that could have taken place, and you investigate it your own way. That's a great thing, and it can't be underestimated too. Being able to create something from scratch and then giving it to the public, and then them enjoying it and getting into an obsession of their own and doing their own research. I mean, you could touch millions with that, and that's crazy. I really wanted to get into, before the time flies by even more, I really wanted to get in more into the Montauk before we go on to Bigfoot. And, now when you first, so for people that don't know, the listeners out there know much about Montauk, let me let you guys a quick rundown. He was talking of the Sage radar tower that's in Camp Hero. It's a big, ominous, huge tower that hangs above, Camp Hero. And this is where the mind programming and mind control was broadcasted from there. They were using this. And basically Montauk Point is Camp Hero Air Force Base that was abandoned, and government didn't use it anymore. The military didn't use it anymore. So Brookhaven Labs were doing these experiments, and they changed their experiments, their mind control experiments, to the underground of Camp Hero. And that's where they were abducting these kids that were like homeless, drug addicts, outcasts, kids that they were maybe psychic abilities that they could find out or whatever. They were finding kids, abducting them, bringing them underground, doing experiments on them. Maybe even some off-world types were involved, possibly maybe even time travel. Who knows? Maybe it's just implanted memories. But they were doing this all underneath Montauk, and this is what he's talking about in the Sage radar tower. So when you first saw that Sage radar tower, what did it feel like inside? Did you have this like dark, ominous feeling, like you said? Like it was. What was the feeling that when you first put your eyes on it? When you were like standing underneath it, I mean, like right there.
It was pretty powerful because, it is this military relic. A lot happened there regardless, and I believe there was a project. I would believe there were several covert projects happening there at this time after all these years of studying this. But when I first saw the tower, I felt something from it. I'm sensitive to energies as well, actually
Yeah.
extremely intuitive and sensitive person. I have to keep it in check a lot because it's really messed with me at
Could
times.
drain you. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oh yeah, so many different ways, and looking back in hindsight, and I recognize what it was. But
Yeah.
being there was a powerful experience for the first time because I was in Montauk so many times and never realized this thing was there.
It's
Because it's
amazing. Yeah.
5 miles from town. Yeah, you just don't see it. You got to actually
Yeah.
drive into the park. And it's a state park now, so the difference between this particular mystery and, let's say, Area 51 is legally you can get in pretty close to all of the structures, including the tower, uh, and it won't be against the law, so you can explore Camp Hero legally. You can drive in there and get pretty close. I broke the law. I broke into the tower. I got into places I wasn't supposed to for the movie. And I, taking an educated guess, I would figure it wouldn't be so easy to get into this covert facility. And in short, just for the people that don't know, the Montauk experiments and the legends are about experiments that allegedly took place between 1971 and 1983. And in the early 90s, there were several guys that came out in these kind of gatherings that happened in New York City, small gatherings in apartments and little halls here and there in New York City and around Long Island. And in those gatherings, there were three gentlemen, Duncan Cameron, Preston Nichols, and Alfred Bielik. And they told this tale. A lot of people were sharing abduction stories and UFO stories, but these gentlemen were telling the tale of that they were recalling fragmented memories of being part of this secret program that took place deep beneath the surface of this Camp Hero Air Force Base in Montauk, New York. And so they were telling this story around these circles for a little while, and then eventually they met up with this publisher, and and Preston Nichols kind of put a book together with him, and that's how it started getting it out into the wider public. But the story goes like this. Between 1971 and 83, apparently there was an offshoot of several programs that happened before it. One was this brutal MK Ultra program that we've been able to prove, and that the government's admitted to, kind of half-assed, but said that it did happen. And all of these other medical programs and mind control programs of the past Montauk Project was derived from those. But these gentlemen also have much taller claims, like several different species of extraterrestrials were down there, that there was a device that was reverse engineered from extraterrestrial technology and used as the Montauk chair. It was a biorhythmic form of interstellar, interdimensional, and time travel. And so these guys were telling this tale, and the tale grew bigger and bigger and bigger. The one aspect of the tale that I felt most believable, and to this day I trust pretty close to 100% that it did happen, I have many reasons to believe that it happened, is the program where they needed human subjects for mind control experiments to develop mind control that eventually would be applied to the general population. And so, how do you get human subjects in 1971, between 1971 and 83? How do you get volunteers to submit themselves to beatings that might beat them to death, or rapes, or horrible trauma that would almost destroy the minds of these people? You kidnap them. That's what they did. They were runaway kids in New York City, and they figured they were unwanted. They were missing. Nobody would care if they further disappeared. So this was a hunting ground now where they would recruit these kids, take them against their will, and bring them into this program. And, now you have people surfacing saying that they were survivors of programs like this, or even this particular program. And one of them is a gentleman named Stuart Swerdlow, who claims he wasn't exactly one of these runaway kids, but he was a kid who was being extracted from his bedroom using a biorhythmic technology, this wormhole technology, taken from his bedroom and bringing him into the program. Again, regardless of what aspects of this I believe or what I disbelieve, I stayed neutral, and I just allowed these gentlemen to tell the tale, and I made a movie called Montauk Chronicles that is a character study that lets these guys tell their story to the best of my ability in chronological order, and I did my best as a movie maker and an artist to kind of illustrate what I felt was happening there, because we don't have pictures and we don't have video, and we don't really have much to go on.
That was amazing. We got 2 minutes to break, so that was Christopher. That was an amazing description of that, and I want to just let everybody know I have this film in my hand. I've had it for a year. It's a docu-film. Not only does he have, interviews with these guys, but he created this, imagery that's amazing. Like you actually see kids getting abducted. You're underground watching what happened to them. Certain things, certain experiments that were done to them. You got this, off-world type that's helping out with almost like a gray alien type being that's helping out with the experiments at one point. I mean, it's serious. It's serious. It's top notch. I mean, it's really great. And people, yeah. you should go out and get that now. I mean, and when we come back from break too, I wanted to get in some questions about Stuart Swerdlow, because I'm very familiar with his, and about Preston Nichols and Alfred Bielek, because it's amazing that you got him right before he passed away, basically, and that's amazing that you were able to get him before he passed.
No, I'm grateful that I got to spend a little time with him, for sure.
Yeah, but it would have been amazing if you would have been able to do this back when they were all in their prime telling these stories. I mean, that would have been great, because he had a few strokes by the time you had gotten to him, I think, right?
Yeah, he was bleeding from his arm and the bridge of his nose and on his cheek, and so I noticed
scabs.
This. And
I saw scabs in the film. Yeah.
Now, I didn't include this moment. I have hours of footage with Al that I shot, and eventually I'll release the whole thing. On the Blu-ray, there's an extended version of his interview, so you can see a lot of this. But there's a moment where Al's bleeding from his nose and his arm, and I asked him, what it was, and I thought it was blood thinner medication, okay, because sometimes blood thinner medication does that to you, and he said that it was because he was age regressed 3 times and that his molecular structure was breaking down. Now, for me in '06, I wasn't some conspiracy junkie. I had an interest in the occult and an interest in the paranormal, and to sit in front of this elderly man in the course of 3 or 4 hours, him telling me everything from vampires are real to everything in black magic is real, which, of course, in many cases it is. And but it was just such a tall order to take at once, and then this man bleeding and telling me that he's breaking down. It was quite an experience that afternoon. It really was. It was pretty mind blowing, and I was fair with everyone.
I don't mean to cut you off. We're going to run to break real quick. Yeah, but
sure.
I don't mean to cut you off there. But yeah, everybody, he was possibly going through time travel. We'll get back to that, and he might have even had ties to the Philadelphia experiment. The song coming up right now is called Serotonin. Spiral Out. Welcome back. It's me, Ra, from themysticalspiral.com, and my guest is the great Christopher Garetano from MontaukChronicles.com. And if you're just joining us, you missed out on the deep, dark tales of what was going on underneath the Camp Hero base. My guest, Christopher, is a movie creator, a director, and he made the docu-film Montauk Chronicles, and he was describing what was going on at Camp Hero base in the 70s and early 80s. Now, Christopher, you were mentioned Stuart Swerdlow. I get the impression that when you went out to St. Joseph, Michigan, were you staying at his house for a couple days or a weekend or something?
The first time I was out there, I didn't stay at the house. I did later on, and when I went back in 2013, because a lot of people don't know this that are aware of my movie, but I made 2 movies. One I started in '06, finished in 2011, early 2011, and brought around to a few festivals. And then I started all over again from scratch in 2013, which is the one that's out in the world right now. The only thing that I retained was Al Bielek's interviews because he passed away in 2011. But I started from scratch with those 2. I redigitized those from scratch and started all over again with a new structure. Wow. So there's another movie I'm not showing people anymore. It exists. There's some things in it that I think are really strange and in terms of artistic things that I like, but other things I just feel like I wasn't nailing it, and so I wanted to start all over again. And by the last year of the making the movie, I was homeless. I was broke, and I really went really deep into this thing. It was 9 years of my life, so it was a
Whoa.
long time. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, and you even describe it in the film, the movie, that it tends, and maybe this was some kind of even programming some way too. Like it tends like time seems to stand still and everything disappears around you while the outside world keeps moving on, but you're stuck in this deep dark research and on this mission to accomplish your goal. I mean, 9 years working on this. I mean, that's intense, Christopher. Intense.
Yeah, it was at times. If imagine trying to swim through wet cement. That's what it felt like, and I don't understand that because it was anything else I would work on would move a little quicker, a lot quicker, and for some reason, this particular thing, it was almost like holding me down. I felt like I was being held down in life and just in existence. It was so strange, but I'm still working on it. It's just the follow-up to Montauk that I had planned called Ghosts of Montauk, meaning like the residuals or the spirits in terms of the memory of the people that were lost in the program. All of that work and all of those ideas are going into this television program, which, typically these TV programs are kind of ridiculous and they're watered down and diluted, but somehow the network, the production company that I'm collaborating with, everybody wants the integrity that I would originally hope that would be in this movie that I would make the follow-up, and so I think it's going to be pretty incredible. I mean, the permission that we have from the state and certain things, because it's an investigation in contrast to my character study, which was the first volume. This is a real investigation, and I'm astonished at what we're about to do. I'm pretty excited. I can't discuss it too much, but I know that we're getting into places that no one's ever gotten into in regard to Camp Hero. Like nobody's ever been there except the people that used to work in there.
I mean, and yeah, you got beneath that. You actually got inside. You guys broke in, and they show it in the film that you broke into where the Sage Tower is, that big ominous Sage Tower that was doing the mind control signals. And when you got inside, you saw there was no stairs. There were stairs going up, but there was no stairs going down. Yet there was an elevator shaft that was leading down, and that
there was a level.
Did you possibly hear voices there too? You made you leave.
I did.
Coming from down there.
Yep, I had no fear of breaking into the place. No,
I see
fear.
that. Yeah.
I got in there, and again, it's a federal offense. I could have went to prison, and I think that was my main fear. Was I just wanted to work on the movie and keep moving. The last thing I wanted to do. I'm not some protester in the Amazon for hubris, getting arrested and going to jail. Getting arrested is not fun. Going to jail is not fun, and having it on your record and having to go through the court system and all that jazz, you don't want to do it. So my fear, yes, I'm afraid of going to jail, and so I heard voices. I don't know if they were otherworldly voices or voices of police officers, but we left because the last thing my buddy Eric and myself wanted to do was go to jail. So we wanted to leave, and rightfully so. It's just a big hassle, and it changes your life, and it's not anything that anybody wants to do. Is go to jail.
You think the voices were coming from beneath?
We couldn't tell. We all heard them. There was 4 of us there, and we heard the voices, and we couldn't make out exactly where they were coming from. In the wintertime, Camp Hero and Montauk is pretty desolate, so there was nobody there. And this was like a very cold, early winter, very rainy. Nobody was there. It wasn't a tourist day, and it was a very dark, rainy day. And we didn't see anybody in the entire state park when we were out there. But when we were in the building, we all heard someone speaking, and I didn't want to sensationalize it.
In your mind? Did you think it was in your mind, or was it like echoes?
Oh, I feel like we heard it in the building, and I just didn't want to play with the idea that there was security, because the security approached me earlier and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm just taking pictures." And they said, "Is it for commercial use?" I said, "No, it's my vacation." And I'm not going to tell them what I'm about to do, but we went we snuck in and we committed an offense. In the case of the new investigation that's partnered with this network, we're legally getting in, so I don't have to worry about getting arrested this time. But it was important to go there. I felt beforehand that we weren't going to find anything because I truly believe that a program as covert and as heinous and as dark and brutal as this one may have been, they're not going to make it easy for you to find a corpse or find evidence of this program happening. You have to imagine that this all-powerful organization, force, whatever it is not going to make it easy for you to call them out on it. So what I think the best way to find out is like small paper trails. Mind you, something like this had to be funded, and it was funded. And so somewhere along the line, much like MK Ultra, there's a file, and somebody filed something somewhere, and there's a way to find that information. And I getting pretty close to finding what might seem insignificant is a very significant paper trail in regard to the funding and who funded this project. And we're very close at finding that too. And I've been on it for over a year.
Wow.
And sometimes I think about the dangers of this. I got very paranoid at several points making in the 9 years where it was detrimental, and I don't talk about it too much. I'm not using it as a sensational selling point that I felt like I was going to be murdered, but I could tell you that I got very paranoid to the point where it was really scary a couple of times. I felt a confusion, and a paranoia, and an exhaustion from it all, and wondered if it was being induced because you fill your head with mind control.
I was going to ask that.
Every day you fill your head with mind control. I worked on every frame of this movie, so it's
and that leads me to a couple questions now. Do you think it's a two-part question basically? Do you think there's other Montauks going on right now? And going back to Stuart Swerdlow, what do you think his role in the project was? Do you think that because I've heard rumors that. I mean, I know you spent time with him. He was in your film, so you're not going to talk badly about. And I'm not talking badly about him, but I've heard rumors that part of his role, and you can't even blame him because he might have been a child getting forced into this and mind controlled. But I heard that rumors were that he was kind of his role in the project was he was helping abduct kids and he was helping find psychic kids and bring them into the project. Do you think that there are other Montauks going on? And B, do you think Swerdlow, what his role was?
He admits to it. He says that he was a handler. He says that he trained them. And then when I asked him in the movie,
wow,
how did you feel watching these boys die every day? He, made this analogy to grass growing in the spring and then dying in the fall. And so I know Stuart, but at the same time, look, what I can tell you is this. You meet people when you're making something like this. I stay at a kind and thankful and neutral place. I am not family with anybody. I'm pretty much a lone wolf myself, but I'm saying outside of my family and my loved ones, I can't embrace someone wholeheartedly just because I'm making a movie. And Stuart's been a good person and a generous person, and very generous with his information. But can I say that I believe him 100%? No. And I've always told him that. I've always been honest about that. I've spoken at his conferences, and I've said the same exact thing. So I don't know what to think. I've had so many different ideas about it. When I first met him, by the end of the weekend, I was so bombarded with this information, I came back, and that was the first time that I felt very ill mentally. I felt mentally ill, which when I visited Al and Preston, sometimes it was humorous, because you had these little old men telling you these stories. You had to kind of go out and giggle a little bit a couple of times, because some of the stories were really fun, especially Preston. I mean, this guy, he's very funny sometimes, But when we met Stuart, it was a different story. And I felt overwhelmed because they were very kind, Stuart and Janet and everybody in the home, and he was constantly fixing our meals for us and bringing us drinks, and you know,
Mm,
that's when you start to get a little paranoid because he's very
yeah.
different than everybody else. And by the end of the weekend, I felt like, well, the suggestion was that my mind was opened, right? My partner with me at the time, my friend John, who was making the first movie with me as a producer, he had a lot of experiences. I won't go into too much detail, but the man ended up in an institution for a little while because of the effects of this situation and because of being immersed in the idea of mind control didn't really work too well with him. And it's serious stuff. I mean, I watched it all go down. So in regard to Stuart, you know, I keep a distance from anything that, and I know they have these healing courses, and I've attended to them, and I've been an attendee of their seminars to learn. I wanted to
Yeah, the
learn.
expansions, right? He's expand. I had a few of his books too from earlier, like his
Yeah,
Blue Blood book, and you know, it's some of his stuff. I feel like I don't know. You know, sometimes people call themselves a healer, and there's no really qualifications to that. And you know, I know he spent some time in prison as well for fraud and stuff. And sometimes I look at his relationship with his wife, and I feel it's kind of weird programming, weird stuff. I don't know, but you know, he like regardless, he has a dark past, and now he's a successful man, and he has a successful business, and you know, you got to give him props for that at least. And he got through that. You know, either way, I think he went through some kind of trauma. You know, and for him to for him to make it through and have a business and just to have his wits about him is amazing. But there is that ominous feeling I get with him sometimes. And I mean, sometimes when I look at him, he looks kind of like an overgrown ghoul with those pointy ears and, you know, you know.
I would say that anybody that you have an instinct about, whatever that instinct may be, listen to it. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I listen to mine, and I try to stay as neutral as possible in these situations. I'm not a firm believer in anyone's philosophy. I've read it all. I mean, when I was I'm sure you and I are very similar because it sounds like we are. And when I was a young guy, I dabbled in everything from black magic to Satanism to everything that a young man is attracted to when he's reading about the occult and paranormal. Do I follow any of that now? Absolutely not. My mind is in the light. I crave positivity and positive energy and anything that keeps me away from the darkness and anything that doesn't allow me to use my own mind. And so a lot of these situations, a lot of these courses, and a lot of these people want you to forget everything you know and listen to everything they teach you, which I'm very much against.
Yes.
I have my own brain and my own soul and my own mind, and as much as anybody puts forth that they want to try and help me, I'm very cautious about anything that anyone's trying to teach me, unless I want to learn. So,
Yeah, no.
and that, it happened early on. I was into this black magic thing when I was a kid. I was 15 years old, and a guy who had dealt with it asked me to come into Wicca with him because he felt I was being absorbed by the darkness, and he passed away not too long after that. But he was a good guy,
Wow.
and he helped me out a lot. He helped me out. So,
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if you know too much about me, but my family we're hereditary Strega, or male is Stregone, but I use the general term Strega. You know, somebody made a comment the other day, but even in my first show, we talked about that term. But yeah, what we are is it's the complete opposite of black magic. It's we're healers, herbalists, shaman, mystical, dream seers. Like it goes back ancient thousands of years. My bloodline goes back to Italy, around the Lake Nemi area. And if you go to my website, you can find.
I'd like to read about that. Yeah, I wonder if I have any lineage there because I know both sides of my family.
Connection to you, yes. When you said that, and I think that's might be where you're drawn to. But we only have 10 minutes left, and I have a lot of stuff I still wanted to get to about you. It's not about me. We could talk about that, on another time. But in the chat room, they were talking about why they were taking psychics or using, different people or experiments. There's a lot of questions going on in the chat room we have here. So I want to just clear it up with the chat room too. That this covert technology and telepathic microwave signals. It's interweaves with people's thoughts, and they were using these psychic people because they were creating almost like a super soldiers, right, Christopher? Like they're almost like a Manchurian candidate because people are asking, what's the purpose of the mind programming and the taking of the psychic kids, and they're asking in the chat room, and I'm saying because they're using this covert technology to interweave with their
Sure.
thoughts.
One of the many purposes that is said to have been developed, and one of the reasons why this mind control was developed, was to develop Manchurian type assassins. In other words, they were taking these young kids off the street and they were beating them half to death. And the reason for that was to fracture their personality to the point where they had no longer a grasp on reality or who they were, right? So they beat these kids so horribly bad, injected them with these hallucinogenic drugs. And according to Preston Nichols, what happened was at that point where the kids were completely obliterated, their personalities were just gone, right?
Shatters.
They implant, right, the personality is shattered. So they implant deep in the subconscious this mind control for whatever it's going to be used for. So once the kids are now built back up into a functional human being, later on they use a symbol or a noise or a gesture or whatever to trigger the mind control, whatever it may be. So now, here's the deal. They spent 13 plus years developing this thing on human subjects. Eventually, through the developing stages, you want to get to the application stage. And so there may have been assassination missions and different things that have happened that were done, let's say, in the CIA or even darker operations that are offshoots of the Montauk project, the application. But I truly feel if you pay attention to what's happening right now in the world, this is not normal. 2 public shootings a month or every 2 weeks is not normal. In the 60s, they had Charles Whitman, who went to the top of the Texas Tower and blew a bunch of people away. Yeah. And it was like him and a few other people. Well, now we have this every 2 weeks somewhere in the United States. And this has been going on for many years. And so if you pay attention to this, this is, I believe, is the application. These people are being triggered to do this stuff. Every time it's a mysterious thing, every single time. So pay attention to this because I truly believe that the bad guys are in charge. I truly believe that if we don't start to do something about it, we're in trouble. Because what's the next stage? That's my question. It has to be increasingly worse. They're doing this for a reason.
Yeah. And
this is happening. This is not
Yeah, and then I was just a guest last night on Tim Beckley's show on KCOR Radio, and we were talking about the clown sightings, and I told them my opinion and what I've learned from even communicating with my spirit guides. I look into their eyes. It's like I'm playing charades with them, and they give me like messages almost like it's a knowing. Like I look in their eyes, and what I get from this is that it's been a mind control telepathy activation of making people dress like clowns and hunt clowns. First the clowns were a good thing, right? They were portrayed as good generations back. It would make people laugh. They'd be in the circus. They were fun. And then somewhere along the line, it turned to evil, right? You give people joy, then you give them pain. You make something good, and then you make it evil. That's shattering the human psyche on something. And then somehow these clowns, an activation has been happening, activating the programming and making people dress like clowns, making people hunt clowns. And that's what's going on with that completely.
Crazy stuff. Think about John Wayne Gacy. He would dress as
look at him. He dressed like a clown. He was a madman.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like it's stuff like that, too. Like, what is it that separates us from the ones that murder for sport and fun? Because those guys exist.
Well, that's that reptilian part of our brain. The base of our brain is the most ancient part of us is that gator roll you to death, instinctual take you down without a thought. That's our base of our brain is that killer, and people don't realize that we have that in us.
Sure, and I suppose that the triggering mechanism amplifies that.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people come out of it saying they don't remember. We have a lot of these things throughout history, these triggered people. Are you from New York, Rob?
Yeah. Okay. We're in New York right now.
Remember Colin Ferguson? Remember that guy who went on the Long Island Railroad and just started blowing people away?
Yeah. When
he represented himself in court, he told the judge that he remembers a guy sitting in the back of the car with a device, a remote-controlled looking device, that he pointed it at him, hit the button, and then all of a sudden he doesn't remember what happened after that.
Jesus.
Yep.
Wow.
And then Sirhan, the other way, what did he kill?
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy? He's another one that said, I saw a man in a dark suit or something like that, and I blacked out and I killed the guy.
Do you know this movie on Strange Things? I mean, I don't watch TV, but I do watch Netflix sometimes. And this movie Strange Things, did you see that on Netflix? They were going to call that Montauk originally, I heard.
Yep, that was the name of it. It was Montauk. It was called Montauk. That's how it was pitched to Netflix. And, I mean, it's, I don't know why they changed it. I don't know if it was for legal reasons or they were worried about somebody suing them or whatever. But I actually have been talking to another network about doing a drama based on something. I'll tell you in private. It's a crazy idea, and I think it could be really something else. And hopefully, we'll get it off the ground. And I think we will, being that all these other things are happening right now. But
we only got 3 minutes. I can't believe we only got 3 minutes, Christopher. Oh my God! I just looked at the time. Now I want you to tell us about Bigfoot before we close, and we got to have you back on another time because I have so much more.
Oh,
we could.
Yeah, anytime, man.
But I wanted to bring up really something fun real quick because we were talking about some dark stuff. At the beginning of your film, when you got maybe it's you as a kid, you're in the tent, and you got the flashlight, and you got that toy, that green toy, the Inhumanoid.
Mm-hmm.
I had that when I was a kid, and we were talking on privately one day, and you were saying how those toys are like magic almost as a kid from your childhood, and that's interesting because that you say that. And was there a reason why you picked that specific toy, or was that reptilian undertone to everything?
I think it worked, aesthetically for the scene, the green in contrast to the other colors. At the same time, it was one of my favorites when I was a kid. I loved that, and Voltron, and all that. I mean, they were my favorites. That's why I was blown away by Pacific Rim. I mean, I could watch that movie over and over. I think it's amazing. So.
And I feel like that's like Voltron. That's like kind of like my ancestors and all our ancestors. We form like a tribal team, like lions, to take on the bad universe. That's like our spirit guides, like Voltron. All our spirit guides, they form like a huge machine to take on everybody. And I think toys from our childhood, they're interesting because like they have all the time, the energy, the joy, the concentration, the playing every day ritual style with it, the use of it for years. I think that charges it with a unique energy from our childhood. That.
Well, that was the early motion pictures that I made. Sitting there, ground level, playing with those things, and imagining for 9-10 hours plus a day is training to make a movie, or tell stories, or just have inspiration. I think it was so. I don't know if the kids are still playing with physical toys as much these days, but
it's horrible. Yeah. And we got 1 minute, so you got your Bigfoot coming up now. That's your new project. Where can people find that? Tell us where they can find. We'll have you back on to describe the whole Bigfoot thing because that's an obsession of mine since I'm a kid.
Oh, I promise I'll make the best thing on it. Mine too. I think it's an amazing subject that's really and shamefully been glossed over and kind of lesser quality films. There's this really good documentary called Bigfoot's Reflection, but outside of that, there aren't too many that are great in recent years. And so I started to make this movie, and I decided that there are so many incredible stories throughout history that I'll make an anthology of the best ones that I think are the best ones for you. And so it's more of a regular movie, 5 stories as opposed to a documentary, even though there's some documentary stuff in the ligaments that hold the stories together.
Cool. This is Spiral Radio. We're at themysticalspiral.com, and my guest is at montaukchronicle.com. Spiral out.
You